Good morning. I call this public hearing of the America250PA Infrastructure Improvements and Projects Committee to order. The purpose of today's hearing is to identify infrastructure and projects that not only highlight each region's history and contributions to our shared history up to and including the semi-quincentennial in 2026, but give an opportunity to highlight important projects in this region of our Commonwealth. This committee is tasked with identifying potential infrastructure investments and projects to showcase Pennsylvania's vital role in the establishment and growth of this great nation in its 250 years since our founding in 1776. The committee was established as a legislative advisory group to support the work on the larger America250PA organization. This committee is a bipartisan, bicameral effort, and our work has been subdivided into 6 regions of Pennsylvania, each of which is represented by 2 members, one of each party, of the Pennsylvania House and the Pennsylvania Senate, as well as members from the overall leadership team and ex officio members. And before we begin today, I would like to thank King's College for graciously hosting our meeting, and I would also like to welcome, serving as our co-chair today, Representative Eddie Paszynski, and this is his neck of the woods, so thank you for offering to co-chair with me today. I'm Kristen Phillips-Hill. I serve as the state senator in the 28th district representing Southern York County. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Representative Paszynski for some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Senator. Appreciate it. And welcome to Wilkes-Barre, Northeastern Pennsylvania, and King's College. I'll be substituting today for Jared Solomon, who is the other chair of this committee, and welcoming all of you. I want to make sure everybody is relaxed. Make your case. This is a very important process. We want to give everyone a chance throughout the entire state of Pennsylvania to be a part of something really spectacular. 250 years. In 3 years, our great country will be celebrating its 250th birthday. And in so doing, we want to try to make sure that all of Pennsylvania is represented with the various projects that we have going on. So with that, again, welcome. Make your case, and we look forward to hearing your information. At this time, back to the senator, and I think we're all going to introduce each other.
I think we most certainly should. Before we do that, I'm going to turn it over to the America250PA Executive Director, Cassandra Coleman.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you for filling in for Representative Solomon, Representative Paszynski. Thank you for being here today. We are America250PA, and I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director. We were charged with planning all of the programming projects and events around the 250th anniversary in 2026 all across Pennsylvania, so all 67 counties. We encourage you to go to our website at America250PA.org to learn about the over a dozen programs and projects we currently have ongoing across the Commonwealth, and we are just so excited to be a part of this committee to really identify proposed legacy projects to see how we can transform the infrastructure here in the Commonwealth either by 2026 or complete it by 2026. So again, we are looking forward to hearing each of your testimonies. And it's wonderful to be here at King's College. I am an alumni, so it's always great to be back on campus. So we want to thank them again for hosting us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we could begin with introductions, we'll start with Mr. Rolko.
Hello, my name is Seth Rolko, and I'm representing Senator Lisa Boscola from the 18th Senatorial District, representing Northampton and Lehigh counties. Thanks for having us today.
Good morning. My name's Dave Orgel. My district starts just a few miles south of here, Luzerne, Schuylkill, and Carbon counties. Happy to be here.
Good morning, Representative Aaron Coffer. My district starts a couple blocks away from here, just across the river. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us here.
Good morning. My name is Brian Doughton. I'm here on behalf of Senator Marty Flynn, the 22nd Senatorial District. which is parts of Lackawanna and Luzerne County. I'm excited to be here on his behalf, and he's excited to be a part of this, and I look forward to hearing the testimonies today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for all those introductions, and we will begin with our first testifier. And our first testifier here today is Mr. Dale Parmentary. Was that okay? Parmentary. Mr. Dale. Oh, my apologies. Would you like to explain the process, Cassandra?
Just so no one gets alarmed, at our first hearing there was bells and everyone started looking around. So today's process, every testimony will be 5 minutes. At 30 seconds remaining, you'll hear one ding. There we go. We just ask that you finish your thought at that point, and then after the 5 minutes is complete, you'll hear 2 dings. And then you'll have 3 minutes of question and answer if the panel had any questions about your project, okay? Perfect. Thanks, Dale.
It really is much more civilized than a loud, technical-sounding beep. So, but we don't want you to be surprised. So with that, I will turn it over to you, and please begin your testimony when you are ready.
Again, my name is Dale Parmentary. I'm a retired, semi-retired consultant from Ballaster Optical right up here on River Street, and I'm now representing the Iron Temple Restoration Project as Secretary and Treasurer. The 36,000 square foot Iron Temple building will serve 2 main purposes once restored. By returning the main hall to its original open floor plan configuration and leaving the stage and balcony unchanged, it will be a music and event venue unlike anything in northeastern Pennsylvania, including the local Sports and Music Hall of Fame. In the rest of the building, we will partner with Wilkes-Barre-based VisVibe to create the technical standards for an open source regional history museum. The students from regional universities will help create content by partnering with local historical societies, cultural sites, and high school AP students. Once projects are complete, they will be vetted by a team of local history scholars, further edited and placed into content menu that visitors will be able to activate in different learning environments. And what a history we have. The first American democracy governed Northeast Pennsylvania, the 6 nations of the Iroquois. The confluence of the Susquehanna and Lackawanna rivers was a critical crossroad between the Haudenosaunee and Algonquin peoples. Few locally understand how powerful and sophisticated the 6 nations were. This story must be told. For the last 5 years, Iron Temple board members have cultivated relationships with the members of the 6 nations. Our board president, Christian Weilige, is not here today because he has meetings today at the Onondaga and Mohawk Cultural Centers in upstate New York. This collaboration and others will result in an accurate historical narrative. In 1769, members of the Sons of Liberty moved here from Connecticut immediately after the 6 nations sold the land to the state of Pennsylvania. These Yankees named the town Wilkes-Barre, which was in an act of open rebellion. They engaged in the Yankee-Pennamite Wars until 1776, when they aligned with Pennsylvania to fight the British. The Yankees had good relations with all the Haudenosaunee nations until 1778, when 4 of the 6 nations aligned with the British. Washington's army might have failed without the supply and soldiers from the 3,000 revolutionaries of the Wyoming Valley. British military leaders at Fort Niagara begged King George to let them decimate Wilkes-Barre and surrounding towns. In July 3rd of 1778, British Army Rangers led a coalition of Seneca, Mohawk, and Nipa-displaced Pennamites and Algonquins into the Battle of Wyoming. Over 300 Nipa soldiers were killed that day. All 1,100 structures were burned down. The remaining 2,700 residents scattered into the wilderness, causing additional death and suffering, known as the Wyoming Massacre. The fallout from the Battle of Wyoming caused many communities to abandon neutrality and join the fight for independence. Accounts were published in newspapers throughout Europe and turned British public sentiment against the war. Brutal and terrifying frontier warfare ensued until 1782, and almost a year after Cornwallis surrendered. Denise Dennis, CEO of the Dennis Farm and an Iron Temple Restoration Project board member, said, "In northeastern Pennsylvania, African Americans had self-agency and were able to live the promise of America. The Wyoming Valley was a fervent stop on the Underground Railroad and heavily supported, fought, and died in the Civil War. There is a reason Frederick Douglass said, "There, in immortal splendor, Wilkes-Barre will remain." In the 19th and 20th centuries, anthracite coal industry boomed and immigrants from Europe flocked to the region for jobs and better life. The Wyoming Valley served as a sanctuary for these workers and families. Local newspapers of the day unfold the often violent saga of these workers as they organized, unionized, and established workers' rights and heavily resistance from demanding mine owners. The Wyoming Valley also led the way in efforts to establish child labor safeguards for young breaker boys sent to earn mere pennies for their families in often dangerous conditions. The narrative barely skims the surface of the relevance of Wyoming Valley's contribution to the story of America, both in the American and the Industrial Revolutions. Telling these stories in a dynamic and thoughtful way while partnering with all the local historic societies and universities and lead to a massive increase of regional heritage tourism and will cause broad-based economic growth. We humbly ask America250PA to join us in sharing these important parts of the history of our Commonwealth and our nation. In the near future, the Iron Temple would be honored to offer a spectacular venue to host an event celebrating America250PA as our museum.
Thank you very much for your testimony today. Would like to open it up for questions from members. Representative Paszynski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Parliamentary, there's been a great effort to increase the tourism throughout northeastern Pennsylvania. The D&L Trail is working its way up through into the Ashley area, and I know that your building will play a major role in that. Do you have an estimate of what the economic impact might be relative to northeastern PA?
From third-party studies, we estimate that we'll have a $2 million budget ourselves annually, and we'll estimate a minimum of $10 million in economic activity. We are going to work with Diamond City Partnership and Luzerne County Historical Society to help quantify those numbers.
Okay, thank you. Let's have opportunity for other folks to have questions.
Senator Argel.
I see that the total overall budget is 11 million. You're requesting somewhere between 1 and 2.5 from this effort. Where do you plan to locate the remainder of the dollars?
Well, actually, we've been at this for 5 years,
Okay.
and we are actually talking to PNC Bank right now about financing the total project. We, with Representative Paszynski's help, we've been able to procure 2 RACP grants in $1 million. We have just recently were awarded an ARPA grant from Luzerne County. We're currently talking to the city also for ARPA funds. We did engage Blue River Solutions for federal historic and new market tax credits, who will finance approximately 45% of the project. In addition, fundraising efforts, naming rights, those types of things would help plug the budget. But right now, we're at a point where we need 11, and with new market tax credits and everything, we're in the 9.5 to 10 million range of funding right now. And we need to close that gap. The idea is ultimately to have as small a mortgage as possible, so between any help that we would receive from you and then fundraising would help to bring that down to as most manageable and sustainable. And the museum will be often used for a fee, but often not for a fee. So the music venue is ultimately, and the open floor plan is very critical because there is no other facility in this region that has an open floor other than maybe Penn's Peak up in Jim Thorpe. An open floor, there's many of the, and we've got this from local talent, people that book local talent, that most bands that require an open floor will not come to Wilkes-Barre. So in between 2 colleges, and those are bands aimed at younger folks, younger than me. And that's the idea. And we really want to engage the 2 colleges, not only in the museum, but also providing a venue to help keep our kids here, hopefully.
What's the current condition of the building?
The current condition, we have stabilized the roof. We had done that pre-pandemic, but unfortunately the pandemic, everything had been stalled. But we actually have, the roofers are going back on the roof in August. We're meeting with them next Tuesday to finish the roof and to begin working on the minarets, where we're going to be also leveraging some of our RACP money for that.
So overall, the building is stable?
The building is stable. We've actually had 5 music videos and several photographers come into the building for fees over the last 2 years. If you saw the beams that are in that building, if you've seen the Norman Rockwell painting with the Rockefeller Center, the boys sitting on the beams, it was built with those beams. I have a picture of one of the beams that's exposed by the projection room. It's 2 feet tall, 1 feet wide, and that's what that was built with. So the main thing is just securing the roof and the minarets. The rest of the building is pretty much just sprucing it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Argel. Representative Coffer.
Thank you, Chairwoman Phillips-Hill. So just a timeline. Obviously, it's a big project, talking about $11 million. What does the timeline look like to make sure that can this be completed in time? What are you looking at? Obviously, you're talking about the financing structure right now. Can you give me a timeline on what you guys are looking at right now with the dollars you have and what that looks like?
Yes, I can, and we've just had to do that with the portion for the ARPA grant that we did. We hope to have the roof and the roofing completed by next spring. We'll have them back up in this August and be done by next spring. Weather permitting, could even be sooner. And ultimately, it's an 18-month project as long as we can maintain the total funding for the total project. If we can't get the total funding for the total project, we'll have to start leveraging what we have and move forward with additional fundraising. But we hope to be open if we get total funding. We hope to be open in early 2025, which would be long before your event, the 250th anniversary, which is interesting. We just celebrated I'm a member of the First Presbyterian Church on Franklin Street. We just had our 250th anniversary. We were on the square. Our church was on the square with the Episcopal Church back in 1772.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any further questions? Mr. Rolko.
Would you be willing, thank you, Madam Chair. Would you be willing to elaborate a little bit more on the job creation that this project would create, and subsequently, after the project's created, how many jobs would remain?
We estimate to operate the venue 15 employees. We're not sure how many would be part-time or full-time, but we actually have engaged. This is a totally complementary facility to the FM Kirby Center, and we've actually initiated some conversations about potentially sharing staff, meaning we would support them, we would help subsidize their payroll, but maybe increase it, but then use some of that staff at our facility, but ultimately 15 and a $2 million budget.
Absolutely. Representative Paszynski.
Real quick, Dale. The pictures you have in front of us demonstrate the various events you can have, the various historical exhibits you have. I believe it would be considered one of the top flight museums anywhere in eastern Pennsylvania.
And we don't have one. I mean, obviously the music venue is will be the major revenue source, but the museum, we actually, if you look at some of the renderings there, we're going to have a living map room in the back of the building, which actually, and if I could, can I come up and just basically. And if you've been to some museums, the living map room is right here. This room is where they used to get dressed for the rehearsals, for their shows and everything. Well, we're going to have that painted white and basically just digitally project the time frame from the beginning of settlers here until today, or until recent history, would be one of the uses, and that's in the back of the building. The other museum space, the marquee part, would be at the top of the building. We're going to have our elevator open up until to this area, where we would also have, using VisVibe, people would be able to come in with a QR code, scan it, and then learn about Zebulon Butler, or learn how anthracite coal reinvigorated the United States. We have open floor space that allows us to do trade shows, but also we want to have a winter's farmers market. We thought that would provide, and if you saw, I checked off a lot of ways our grant applies to this, all those sections. providing of Winter's Farmers Market would provide fresh local sources to downtown city residents, which is something I think that is always needed. Obviously, weddings could be done as well, and we do have, on the first floor, we hope to have the local sports and music hall of fame as well.
Thank you, Dale.
We do have, on the open floor, there's still balcony seating. There is still balcony seating.
So there are several projects that we're going to hear about today.
Yes.
And can you talk about the potential to connect some of the things that we're going to hear about today? We're going to hear about a 9/11 trail. We're going to hear from your historical society. Are you able to join these things together and leverage them?
Actually, I'm not sure if my testimony did a good enough job that, but we want to not only involve the universities to create the content, the interactive content, working with AP high school students. We'd like to invite all the local historical societies to provide some of their artifacts for our building to promote their historical societies and their spaces. The trail that Ed had mentioned is going to actually end right in front of our building, which comes from Jim Thorpe right to our building. So naturally, this regional heritage museum and cultural center would be applicable of anybody walking that trailer to come in and then view some of the history. So we'll obviously be reporting that, but we would like to promote, and more than just Wyoming Valley, the Scranton area, the Industrial Revolution, Eckley Village in the Miners Village, all of these regional assets that are so under advertised, that are so would bring people. And we really believe the type of, not only the museum, but the type of music events that we would bring in will bring people from out of the area that require hotel rooms. And we know already from Tony Brooks doing tours that many of the people that come here to the casino want to come downtown Wilkes-Barre. They've actually asked to come into our building many times. So what would be a better opportunity to not only have them come in, but also come in and then have the ability to learn about the region. And I think that would be something that has synergy with many of the projects you're going to hear about today.
And Dale, if you could just answer one other question. The actual architecture, the mortar work and everything is actually artistic. And we believe it's the only last remaining
Moorish revival in the United States. It was on the Shriners magazine, the national magazine's front cover for 60 years. It's the only building of its kind. And that's one of the reasons I'm involved. It would be an awful shame to see that come down.
Very good. Well, I can tell you that as we drove in, it certainly caught my attention. My husband looked at that and he said, I think I'm going to have to walk over there and check that building out. So it certainly has a very capturing profile when you come into town, and understanding that history, it was connected to the Shriners, is certainly very significant. And I think we all will tell you that we're very parochial about our districts. I'm from York. We think that, the whole Commonwealth and the country revolves around York. But to know and understand the unique history that you have and the contributions by the people of this community to our revolutionary history has been very, very helpful and very interesting. And are there any further questions? We thank you so much for your testimony here today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Our next testifiers here today are Mary Walsh and Sherry Emershaw. They are from the Luzerne County Historical Society. I'd like to welcome you both, and you may proceed with your testimony when you are ready.
Thank you so much. First, I'd like to thank Dale for giving you all a lot of historical perspective before I have to talk. The society, the Luzerne County Historical Society, was founded in 1858 as the Wyoming Historical and Geological Society. The LCHS is the oldest county historical society in Pennsylvania. The LCSH owns two historic house museums, the 1803 Sweatland Homestead in Wyoming and the 1790 Nathan Dennison House in 44. We are requesting funding to restore the Dennison House and the adjacent interpretive center. Colonel Nathan Dennison was second in command to Colonel Zebulon Butler at the Battle of Wyoming. In Colonel Butler's absence, and Dale told you a lot about the battle, so I won't, Colonel Dennison signed the capitulation papers after the battle. Various members of the Dennison family owned the house after the colonel's death in 1809, and I'm going to skip. The Bureau of Historic Sites and Properties of the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission restored the 1790 appearance of the house in 1976. The house has been owned by the Historical Society since 2010. Use of the house and the interpretive center is limited. The house is open for tours only 1 or 2 Sundays a month in the summer. There's no heat in the house. Last year, we hosted several lectures on the grounds at Dennison as well as a holiday event in December. Several groups, the DAR chapters, the 24th Connecticut Militia Reenactors, and Kingston Historical Society occasionally use our interpretive center for meetings. It costs the Historical Society between $6,000 and $7,000 a year to maintain the house and interpretive center. Between the two, we generate about $800 a year in income. Both buildings need repairs, restoration work, and maintenance. Our plans for FY24 include increasing the number of events at the Dennison property. We also plan to promote the participation of the area patriots in the Revolutionary War and the importance of the Battle of Wyoming. We will widely promote the history and importance of the route from the Dennison House to the Sweatland Homestead to the Wyoming Monument, all within a mile of each other on Route 11. We recognize the need to generate more income to preserve and protect the properties. Those groups that use it now are welcome to continue. We also plan to host lectures, tours, and outside events monthly. And we also hope to have pop-up exhibitions with Revolutionary War themes. Dale. The Sweatland Homestead was built in 1803 as a one large room with a sleeping loft. The family lived in other buildings in the property before moving into the 1803 house. Luke Sweatland was a soldier in the militia. He was one of the older men who stayed behind in the fort to protect the women and the children. We have some restricted donation to maintain the Sweatland property. There is no similar funding for the Dennison House or the Interpretive Center. Our goal is to restore and reimagine the Dennison property, its uses, and increase public awareness of the area's contribution to history. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. I've been involved with the Luzerne County Historical Society for over 12 years, and significantly the Nathan Dennison House, where I am a docent, and I've created many programs, and personally I've raised over $7,500 for its cause. It is a major historic significance not only for Luzerne County, but nationally. It is the home of a patriot who fought a battle here in Luzerne County. It's a unique historic event, and of course we want to continue being able to provide education for the public of its historic significance and to honor a patriot, Nathan Dennison. The state in 1976 recognized its historic significance where they did a formal renovation, but those renovations are 50 years old now. We have done our best to maintain this structure, but we need funding to bring it to the 21st century so that future generations can hear the story of our patriots and, of course, Nathan Dennison.
Thank you so much for your testimony here today. I would like to recognize that Representative Twardzik had joined us. He was sitting in the back of the room. He has now come up here with the rest of his colleagues, and we're glad to have him here in Luzerne County. For members, questions for our testifiers? Representative Paszynski.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mary and Sherry, for being here, and thank you for your dedication to the history of northeastern Pennsylvania. You indicated there was a certain amount of cost that was involved. Could you clarify that? Was that $6,000 to $7,000 per year?
That's how much it costs us to
Operate
the Dennison House and the Interpretive Center right now.
on a yearly basis?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the income?
$800.
$800. What is your relationship with, let's say, the Historical Society throughout Wyoming Valley to bring more tourism to the Dennison House? Because as a kid growing up in the area, the Dennison House, you know, everyone knew about it. That was a part of our history here that went back to the 1700s. And it is significant. The massacre that you indicated is also highly significant. Of course, we do have the Wyoming Monument not far away from you. How are we promoting people to come to visit and learn about the history of the Dennison House?
I can answer that.
Okay.
We continually, we're a nonprofit, so we have a very limited budget. We don't have an advertising budget per se. We take advantage of all local stations that allow us to promote our events. We've gone on television to promote our events. We use social media to promote our events. And we participate in many local events, which I will be participating at the Hanover Green Cemetery on this Sunday. And of course, we always bring promotional materials to educate the public about what LCH does at all of our events.
Well, I thank you very much, and keep up, promoting that. I know others are going to have some questions for you, so pass the torch over to the chairwoman.
Thank you, Representative. Ms. Coleman.
Do you have a number of how many folks visit every year?
It varies. It varies. I'm sorry. I'm just very involved.
you're
with the-
fine.
I've been a docent for over 12 years.
Absolutely.
It varies from maybe 400 a year to maybe 250 a year.
And do you track where they come from as
Yes,
well?
we do. We
Okay.
have a guest book that we require our guests to log in their address, their name and address. And it's very interesting because a lot of them come from many parts of the United States, primarily because they're very interested in their ancestry. Ancestry.com has opened the door to a lot of people realizing that they have an ancestor that fought in the Battle of Wyoming, and a lot of them have been related to Nathan Dennison. And as a matter of fact, one of the gentlemen who I came in contact with from Tennessee, he is related to Nathan Dennison. He ended up getting very involved with our home and had a significant artifact from that home from 1820 of Nathan Dennison's granddaughter, which he then donated. It was a sampler. Many young women of the day sewing, and a sampler was a way of educating them. And he eventually did donate it 2 years ago to us. So it's a prized possession of our Dennison collection.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doughton.
Thank you. Thank you both for testifying today. I just had a quick question. What is the size of the house itself, like the size of the structure?
There's 2 stories, and I think, and I'm just guessing here, but I think the house might be about 25 by 50. It's not a big house.
Okay.
Which has a central fireplace, and when the only time there's any heat in the building is when we do light the fireplace and when we're having events. So.
It's about 24 by 40 square colonial style home with a central chimney. It consists of about 8 rooms. We also have an annex, which is a visitor center and an interpretive center in the rear of the building, which represents like a carriage barn, where it has a public space and restrooms.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members? Representative Coffer.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just looking at sort of the breakdown of some of the dollars here that you have lined out here, Will this bring it to full restoration of what you guys are trying to do? This is the total cost of what you guys want to totally put into this and would fully restore this to what your goals and aspirations have been.
I hope so, yes. It doesn't account for putting any kind of heat or electricity in the house. We do have one outlet so that we can put on a light once in a while, but yes, very hot, which limits its uses because the rooms are small and it's very authentic.
And you also mentioned Sweatland. Just curious, for my own curiosity, where does that stand right now in regard to restoration and what might be needed there?
We have restored the outside of the building, and we do need to do some work inside. We have a trust from one of our former board members that we are able to access to do work strictly at Sweatland. So that one, we're not so, our hands aren't tied with that one so much.
Thank you very much.
Further questions from members? Would like to thank you for your testimony here today. I'd like to welcome Andrew Hamilton to testify here on behalf of the September 11th National Memorial Trail Alliance. And Mr. Hamilton, you can begin your testimony when you are ready.
Thank you. I have a couple things to hand out.
Very good. Thank you.
And we added one, so I've got that one too. Indeed. There, now I'm about ready.
Well, and we are ready for you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you all for inviting me here to talk about the September 11th National Memorial Trail, and specifically the Panther Creek Valley Heritage Trail segment of the trail. My name's Andrew Hamilton. I'm a landscape architect. I am chair of the board of the September 11th National Memorial Trail Alliance. I'm also chair of the board of the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. The September 11th National Memorial Trail is a system of trails linked together on roadways such as State Route 209 in the Panther Valley. The trail is 1,500 miles long with 902 miles in Pennsylvania. The September 11th National Memorial Trail connects the three national memorials to communities along the route, from Flight 93 National Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, to the National September 11th Memorial and Museum in New York City, and the 9/11 Pentagon Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. The September 11th National Memorial Trail Alliance sought federal legislation to recognize the importance of the trail and what it means to the United States of America. We worked with 2 administrations and departments in a bipartisan approach. Legislation for the trail was unanimously approved in the House and the Senate and signed into law by the President of the United States. This trail is truly an American trail that tells the history of our generation's Pearl Harbor moment. The Panther Creek Valley Heritage Trail is a key segment of the September 11th National Memorial Trail. The Panther Valley Heritage Trail will connect the Schuylkill River Greenway Heritage Area in Pottsville to the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor in Jim Thorpe. The Panther Valley Creek Heritage Trail route between the 2 areas is 30 miles. In addition to being part of the September 11th National Memorial Trail, when completed, the Panther Creek Valley Heritage Trail will create a 270-mile loop, including Carbon, Schuylkill, Lehigh, Northampton, Bucks, Philadelphia, Montgomery, Chester, and Berks counties, using the trails along the Delaware, the Lehigh, and the Schuylkill Trail, or Schuylkill River. The key output of trail development is economic growth of communities because of public investment. Tourism is one of Pennsylvania's largest sectors, bringing in $46 billion to the state in 2019. The potential for the Panther Valley, because of this investment, is that businesses will relocate and people will move to Panther Valley. Additionally, the active tourism is a growth sector in the tourism marketplace. Think of the Great Allegheny Passage Rail Trail and its legacy for its region. The work that needs to be accomplished can be broken down into 5 categories. Planning and acquisition. In 2007, there was a feasibility plan accomplished. It outlined a series of routing opportunities. The routing will have some acquisitions or easements needed. Preliminary final engineering and permitting. Once the planning phase is accomplished, the engineering phase can start to better determine the development of the trail. New trail construction. This would be broken down into a series of projects, which is how you have to do something of this magnitude. And they would be broken down into segments that would take about 2 years each to accomplish. Rehabilitation of existing trails. The existing Panther Creek Heritage Trail from Middleport to Tamaqua is in need of reconstruction, not rehabilitation. The planning for this section has been accomplished, engineering needs to be accomplished, and development needs to be accomplished. Potential rehabilitation of the Switchback Trail can also be tied into this, and that goes into Jim Thorpe. Administration. Panther Creek Valley Heritage Trail will be a 2-county planning, engineering, and development project. With this in mind, there should be funding allocated to the counties or other entities to administer the projects. In conclusion, the Panther Creek Valley Heritage Trail is significant to the localities it will connect, but it's also a potential economic tourism driver with the regional 270-mile loop it will create and the significance of being part of the nationally legislated September 11th National Memorial Trail. I'd like to add that when trails are 100 miles or longer, the marketing that goes in and the people that come to the area to do active tourism is really significant. Thank you. Timing.
Indeed, indeed. I will open it up to members for questions. Representative Coffer.
Thank you. I just want to ask about timeline. I
Yes.
know you mentioned about a couple 2-year segments. Obviously, we trying to hit a
Right.
deadline here a
Right.
few years away. Do you think it's, tell me about how you see that timeline lining up, because it seems like there's a lot of work that needs to be done and sort of to line up that timeline of what your goal is.
Precisely. And there's going to have to be a breakdown of projects into, as I said, segments of projects. It's the only way this can be accomplished. One would be approaching the railroad to get the easements or the purchase of the railroad line as needed. That in and of itself is a success in 2 years. believe me, I've worked with many railroads. We just recently had the state of New Jersey fund 10 miles, they purchased 10 miles of rail line and added $20 million for construction. They invested $85 million in one foul swoop for 10 miles of rail line. That's a different area. That's not the types of prices we're going to have here, right? But as we're going into new trail development, you break those into components that can be accomplished within a timeline. So is it 1 mile of trail that's a success? Yes. Is it 10 miles of trail that's a success? Yes. Rebuilding the existing trail that between Middleport and Tamaqua can be accomplished, absolutely. Doing some of these other pieces and components, absolutely.
Representative Paszynski.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. And thank you very much for your testimony here. This is quite a project.
Yes.
Do you, maybe I missed it, do you have a cost for maintenance once the project is complete, or the administration of, to make sure that's operated appropriately?
There are studies that are accomplished. That's a next phase in a project, always, and it comes down to who's going to own it, who's going to maintain it. I can get things to you on that, but that's something that would come out of further planning, looking at the other plans that have been accomplished in Delaware County, in the state of Maryland, and other places that we can pull from in the planning process to accomplish what's needed to update, really, 2007 plan. Because a lot has been done since 2007, and much fresher knowledge is out there.
And has all those communities that will be affected by this, have they consented to this process?
This process was started in 2007. So the efforts have been there. It's been engaged by the Schuylkill River Greenway, by the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor, and by communities and chambers of commerce. Whenever you go in, even in my own neighborhood, I live just outside of this area and in this area, a trail, people didn't know when they bought their houses that a trail was going to come in, and that's, this is a 2007. So it's going to be refreshing people's knowledge and the history of the planning efforts to make sure everybody's on target with this, and we can move forward.
Thank you very much.
Representative Twardzik.
Good morning, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you for the presentation. We all know that trails are important. We have some great projects going on in Schuylkill County right now that tie our way all the way into Philadelphia.
Yes.
And this is really nice that we'll be able to tie in even more. The active tourism, I believe, is a wonderful opportunity for us. The world has changed, and people want to get outside more and do this.
Yes.
So I'd be a big supporter. It's a big project, but I look out at Seth there, and I wonder how many Boy Scouts we can get Eagle Projects to continue to help us. But let's put all the people we can toward this and make it work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Coleman.
Thanks, Mr. Hamilton. A quick question. In your proposal, you mentioned DCNR. What's the relationship or the conversations that have occurred there at all?
So with DCNR, I was the head of their trail committee for the state for years, and put in term limits so we could refresh the body of people there, and that was some 7-8 years ago. We work very closely with DCNR, We have gained the major trail and greenway status. We've spoken to Schuylkill County, Carbon County, every county, 26 counties across the state, and gotten acceptance for the route of the September 11th National Memorial Trail. I've worked with the secretary for years.
Senator Argyle.
The potential here is astonishing. I remember well Jim Thorpe being a struggling, dying old coal region town in the 1970s, and if any of my colleagues were to visit there this weekend, your biggest challenge would be, where do you find a parking place? And we've added a lot of parking in the community, and now I think the other communities would like to learn from Jim Thorpe's experiences, work together as partners. They would like to see that same level of economic vitality in places like Tamaqua and Coaldale and Lansford. They have their own, I think, attractions, and the connection by a trail. Bikes don't take up as much parking spaces as a car does, and so they see this as working together. I think the level of enthusiasm is very, very significant, and I truly believe this is an excellent idea whose time has come. My only minor criticism is we're going to have to teach you how to spell Tamaqua, but we'll work on that. Not a problem at all. Thank you.
I apologize.
Any further questions from the panel? One question for you. I represent that green piece that's in York County. We've worked very hard to develop that trail, as well as working to connect in from Wrightsville through Spring Grove out into Hanover, using parts of the old Hanover Trolley Trail. We heard from them when we were in York County. We are going across the state. There's a lot of territory that you cover across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Have you had any conversations with other entities, other communities, about how you can work together through this process to achieve more connectivity through this trail?
Absolutely. Let me start at the Great Allegheny Passage. We are working with Somerset County, and we are building a trail right now to connect Flight 93 to the Great Allegheny Passage. That's an ongoing effort. We work through the political cycles, the funding cycles. We work with the federal government, the state governments, the local governments. In the Hollidaysburg, Altoona area, the Johnstown area to Harrisburg is known as the Mainline Canal, historic Mainline Canal. We're working on a series of projects over there. I can't even describe them in enough detail, nor do we have time. We work with the National Park Service in all of the parks along the way as well. Just yesterday, I was in Delaware Water Gap talking with people about the problems we have along Route 611 between Delaware Water Gap and Portland. And so we work with communities in different levels and different levels of communities from the federal government. We'll be down speaking with representatives, House representatives and senators' aides on the 22nd of this month, trying to make sure we bring more funding into the effort as well. So we're all over the place. And I also should say, and thank you, there is a Senate caucus that has started in Pennsylvania for the September 11th National Memorial Trail, which will help us laser focus some more efforts on this. Additionally, these signs, these are the trail signs. These are the trail signs. But we have street signs as well, road signs. We want to get rid of the road signs. We want them all to be trail signs, but that's going to take a while. Through Congressman Fitzpatrick's office, we put in a community grant, and we hope to be able to sign the entire state of Pennsylvania, on-road and off-road. We already have started that, but more in a PennDOT district by district way, which can take a little bit of time.
It certainly can. Well, thank you very much for sharing those collaborative efforts. We really appreciate that. Are there any further questions? Thank you very much for your testimony here today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would like to welcome our last testifier here today, and that's Alice Keener. She's with the Wyoming Valley chapter of the National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution. Thank you for being here today, and please begin your testimony when you are ready.
All right, thank you very much for having me. I am the regent of the chapter. I am also the national vice chair for the DAR Service for Veterans for Eastern Division and for units overseas, so I'm very proud of patriotism. As you know, the DAR is a nonprofit, non-political, volunteer women's service organization which is dedicated to promoting patriotism, preserving our American history, and securing America's future through better education for children. We were the first chapter in Pennsylvania in 1891, which was 6 months after it first started, and we cover most of the Wyoming Valley area. The Wyoming Valley chapter purchased Queen Esther's Rock, which is known as the Buddy Rock, which is located on Susquehanna Avenue between 7th and 8th Streets, and in Wyoming. We did this in 1895. I think the gentleman's name was Amos Hughes. He has maintained, and we have maintained it since that date. In 1800s, it was a very popular place, the Bloody Rock. People would come there and they would chisel pieces off of the rock, and we put a big metal grating over the top of it to secure it. A historical marker was placed in 1962 by the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission to recognize it as the Bloody Rock. As other ones have talked about it, the Wyoming Massacre, we had 18 men who were killed, scalped at that location. It was part with the Tories and the Indians. Men, women, and children were from this area, and they were killed trying to escape. This little area of land where the rock is and this historical marker are located is really in need of some upkeep. The fencing needs to be painted. The historical marker needs to be kind of touched up and painted, and we do need some landscaping. We are also trying to find someone who can properly clean that big bronze marker that we have that was dedicated in 1896. So our goal for America250 is to have this historical site looking pristine as visitors from the area do stop by as the ceremony and Wyoming commemoration each year on July 4th. And they also visit the other places like the Dennison House, the Sweatman Home, and many other things there. At this time, I just threw kind of a quick budget together because we're going to meet this July to discuss this matter. And I do want to contact a local landscaper, Edwards over here, and see what he can do for us. Landscaper, if we can get him to pull up the hedges, which have come almost as tall as I am now, and they were just stalks. If we can get a painter who can get the rust off of the fencing and paint it again, and to, then the fence posting, not the fence, but the signpost needs to be picked up and cleaned. Then if we can put new hedges in there and plant our native plants and maybe a pollinator garden there. So it's not a really huge undertaking, but it's big for just a small group of ladies like ourselves. And we really want to improve it as part of our history and as we celebrate America's 250. It is part of the DAR mission objectives to be historic preservation for education and patriotism. And this project would encompass all. We want to beautify what is there. We want to teach what has happened and remember that the patriots who died there, whether they were on that battlefield or in the forts that they were there to protect. So as we're preparing for the America's 250, and visitors that are stopping by at these sites in 44 and Wyoming, and we can teach them more about what has happened in this area. The men, women, and children were part of the history of this valley. The conflict between Connecticut and Pennsylvania and the Revolutionary War took place on these lands. The Wyoming Valley chapter wants Queen Esther's Rock to be presentable as we remember and preserve a part of our national heritage so future generations can appreciate it and understand the significance of this site. Basically.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keener. Questions? Representative Coffer.
I just want to make a little point to my colleagues here. It wasn't so much a question, but we walk by it every day when we're in the Capitol. Actually, one of the little mosaics on the floor is of the imagery of the scalping that happened at Queen Esther's Rock, and actually says Wyoming right on the floor, right by the main steps of the Capitol Rotunda. So I would encourage my colleagues to stop and see that at some point. When I bring tours around, I like to show that imagery that's there. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's actually a piece of our state history on the floor, the mosaic on the floor. So.
Thank you, Representative. Ms. Coleman.
Thanks, Alice. And I have a point too. So I remember this when I was a student at Wyoming Area in our AP history class. We actually had to go and visit and submit an essay on the site. So just talking about that, and again, remembering that from growing up, how does the DAR promote this site across the Wyoming Valley?
Okay, well, what we do is like each year when the Wyoming commencement takes place over there on July 4th, there's a floral tribute to all those who had passed away. And some of us have patriots who were killed, and their names are listed on that sign. But then we go over to Queen Esther's Rock, and we have another ceremony over there, and people come over there with us. And then we kind of remember some of it. Like I was preparing for this year's presentation already. And when you really read the books, like the history of what really did happen, you can't read it to the kids because it's really kind of sad. It was a 5-foot rock that they basically used. So, but bringing them over there, there's people who pass by and they'll say, I passed by, tell me more about it. So you are reaching different people. So when they're over there, we always tell them to come over and visit. I did bring a quick copy of what it did look like, because our biggest thing is the big bronze marker that's in front, because that needs to be cleaned, but it has to be done properly. And we also have the ones for over in Wyoming, Fort Turkey, and Fort Things. So if we can figure out how to clean this one properly, we can clean the other ones and the one on the square also that we own, that we are part of that. So we do have little bits of history all through over. And that way, when they do come over, we always tell them to visit over to the Dennison House, because usually there's people over there doing a little luncheon, a picnic, and the militia's over there. So we are trying, but some of us are getting older, and it's not easy to get the weed whacker in that. So it's little things, but it's the rust that's there, the bush that's 5 foot tall, and it's just stocky now. We want it to look nice, like it's kind of like I go down to Easton to their Heritage Day, and it's nice to see how everybody in the community is pulling together. So if we're all pulling together, I think that counts.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work.
Mr. Rolko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question relates to how is it maintained now? Are there volunteers that come and take care of the grounds? Daughters of the American Revolution, I guess, just what's the current status?
Yes, we go over in the springtime, like now before the program here in June, and then we do the fall cleanup. So we pack up in our car all the clippers and the things and the bags, and we personally take care of it. It is our job since 1891. But it's our job to make sure that history is staying there as much as it can. So it's not a lot of money, maybe $5,000 or whatever, but I'm sure Edwards would work with us, and it's just getting more people, and if we do some kind of nice parade, we can always be part of that.
Representative Paszynski.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much, Ms. Kiner, for your testimony here today. Prior to your organization taking care of that area, who maintained it?
Nobody.
Nobody.
No, so in 1891, when the DAR became known, and then we purchased that land from, I think it was Amos Hughes, his name was.
Did you say you purchased it?
Yeah, I was around then. The Wyoming Valley chapter purchased that lot of land. So the rock was actually closer to the river. It was brought up a little bit, and that's why the big the grading is over the top of it, because people had been picking away at it.
I see.
So we have the deed for it.
Is there any coordination between all of the people that love, respect history, within our own Wyoming Valley Historical Society, that are coordinating some of these things and possibly working together in order to raise money, or do you have events?
We do little fundraising because we do scholarships. We do many different things. So a lot of the money, like we'll have like $100 or $200 set aside that we give. So we try to give back to the community. So like when we do like the Green Heritage Day, we'll be doing that one there. We do the one out at Francis Slocum, so people learn about what's here, and they kind of help us out. And we are trying to always look for new people because, as we're getting older, we need some new people to do the things, that we can do.
Yes.
But that's the fun. We're trying to fundraise. Being that we're like a nonprofit, we try not to be out in the corners, begging for money all the time.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your work with the DAR. It's really impressive. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Keener. I can tell you that we are grateful back home in York for our DAR chapter and the incredible work that they do. And so recognizing it's an all-volunteer organization, we appreciate your commitment and dedication to preserving some of our nation's earliest history. Thank you again.
Well, thank you for having
your
me and let me
testimony.
speak. I appreciate it very much. Okay, thank you.
Well, with that, I would like to open it up to my colleagues for any closing remarks. Representative Coffer.
I just want to thank everybody for their submissions. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here. Really appreciate the testimony and insight on the projects you guys are working on. Certainly didn't know about some of them, learned a lot about different ones. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here in Luzerne County. And to my other colleagues who got to travel, wasn't so far from me, a whole 5-minute trip here. Representative Paszynski, I think, probably walked here. But, you know, really thank you, everybody, for taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, kudos. That's a double response. I appreciate you all for being here. Your dedication to preserving the history that must never be forgotten. Every single one of these projects that you are involved with are important, not only from an educational standpoint from our children, but for all of us, never to forget. I want to thank you so much for being here and your testimony, and thank my colleagues for being here as well, and the good work of Senator, my goodness gracious, I know, I was, she has 3 names just like me. So, Senator Phillips-Hill.
That's why we call her KPA.
Yes.
It's like your EDP.
All right, I'm EDP, yeah. And unfortunately, Jared Solomon couldn't be here today, the other co-chair, who's a super guide, also working very hard on this. And thank Senator Argyle and, of course, our gentleman from Senator Seth Rocco from Senator Boscola. Appreciate you all making the trip up here. I hope you enjoy Northeastern PA. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Representative EDP. We'll start calling you by your initials, too. It's okay. It's a lot. You know, last night in York County, our Manufacturers Association they had their big event, brought in a guest speaker, and it was Mike Eruzione, Miracle on Ice, right? The guy that scored that winning goal. And at the end of his remarks, what he said is, you know, we need to remember that we live in the greatest nation on this earth. And I thought, that is just, I left there feeling inspired. And I come here today, and I am reminded that on the greatest nation on this earth, we live in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Keystone. It's where it all began. And we have such rich history from the founding of our nation to one of the greatest challenges, at least in my generation, of 9/11, and we still persist to this day. And so I'm grateful to each and every one of you for your efforts to preserve that history from the Revolution to the present. And we have a great challenge because right here in Luzerne County and previously in York County and Center County, we are hearing of so many incredible projects. There will be more projects than we will be able to fund. But I will tell you, we will diligently work to do the very best that we can to assist you in preserving and sharing our great Commonwealth and our nation's history. And with that, I would like to remind everyone that our next public hearing of this committee is scheduled for Thursday, June 15th, all the way on the other side of the state in Clarion County. And again, thank you to all of the testifiers, the members, the volunteers, and King's College for graciously hosting us here today. And I will now recess this committee until the call of the chairs. Thank you again.